background why I sort of thought this would be of value to us. Risk assessments, it's one of those things that we talk about. It's like safe driving, but we actually don't often always know what a risk assessment is. And we tend to, in life, do risk assessments without knowing that we do a risk assessment. But there's so many of these that are going around and so forth and so forth. So when I got hold of Jaco, he got hold of me. I said, Al, come and share your experience, your views about it, and he will tell you a bit about himself. But before we start, Anneke is recording this program, so afterwards we will distribute it to the members. It goes onto YouTube. You type in the ASPASA. If Danny spells it right, you won't get to a porn site. But if you spell it right, you'll get to ASPASA. Danny says he got to a thing. So just quickly, I just would like to remind everybody the agenda says that we totally comply to Competition Commission, to the competition legislation. We do not collude here, so that's the standard of ASPASA. And then just the rules of the Teams meeting, that's that we cut our mics and cut our videos and we leave the speaker to talk. And those of you who know the story by now, there's a little hand that you can put up, and then the speaker will see that. And at some stage, we'll ask him to allow us to ask questions or so forth. So I don't make these things too complicated because you guys are sitting in these meetings so many times a day that people can irritate you. So Jaco van Wyk is going to give I think we sent out his CV with the paper or the agenda. He's going to give you just a short little rundown why he understands risk assessments. I'm going to cut and then we listen to him, and I hope you all enjoy. I don't think it'll be 2 or 3 hours. It must probably be in the region of about an hour or so. So Jaco, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to go out. I will be listening, but I'm not going to sit here with my face on and my mic on. Welcome and thanks for coming to share this with us. It's great to have somebody to come and share sometimes complicated issues which we don't always understand and know. Thank you, Jaco. I'm cutting now. Thanks.
Thank you, Nico. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and present to us, ASPASA members. I'm certainly looking forward to it. I've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to jump in immediately and start it. I'm just loading my presentation, so if someone can just give me an indication if they see it on the other side.
It's there. Thanks.
Can you see it?
Yes. Thank
you. So, like we agreed, Nico, I'm going to speak about risk management considerations for smaller scale open pit miners. And this is the agenda that we agreed. Why is risk management important? An overview of important tools used in risk management to improve your business. In fact, we're going to cover 2 there. And why is risk culture important? And then lastly, I want to give you some pointers, practical pointers of what each site can do to improve their risk culture. To start off with, I want to look at risk management first, because I think a lot of times the use of risk management is misplaced. So I just want to set the proper background so that people can understand what the real intention of risk management is. If we start off with the definition, risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. A risk is an event that is uncertain, because if it's not uncertain, it forms part of your normal planning. Occurs in the future, because it's something uncertain, you can't really know what it is today. It affects the achievement of your organization's objectives, otherwise a risk to other people or other companies. It could have a positive or negative impact, and it can be foreseen realistically. Otherwise, you're talking about a black swan event, and obviously no one can really foresee that. So because risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives, I want to start off to look at what's the main objective of an organization. An organization, I think in its simplest form, organizations create value by achieving strategies and objectives. They run a plant or something in line with their core values, and by applying sustainable practices, because you don't want to run a business for a day and then it's bankrupt, to meet customer needs by supplying innovative but competitive products in a target market. So what are the typical examples of key uncertainties impacting organizational objectives, since risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives? If you look at your target market, questions that you will ask yourself: is there a large enough market for our products and services in line with our mission and vision? In terms of interpretation of customer needs, you would say, have we interpreted customer needs and preferences accurately? In terms of supplying products, can we provide innovative but competitive products and contribute value? A lot of people have very innovative products, but they're too expensive and then they fall out of the market. Are we following the right strategy? A lot of people have very good ideas, but they fail to put it into a strategy that can be executed. Can we execute our strategy by meeting relevant objectives with planned timeframes? Some people have a good strategy, but they cannot complete it, and so they fall behind on their projects, so their projects can't reach the market. Core values. Do our core values matter to us and contribute value? Otherwise, why have them? Sustainable practice. Are we satisfying the needs of customers in a fair and respectful manner? Can we contribute intended value over the longer term? Otherwise, your business will cease to exist. Do we comply with relevant legislation? Now, I've used the word relevant here. You're not required to comply to all legislation. It's only legislation that's applicable to you, so focus on that. Do we manage our environmental footprint in a socially acceptable way? We're seeing good examples these days of environmental protesters closing down plants and create value. Are we contributing value as intended by our mission and vision? So Henry Kissinger said, to be absolutely certain about something, one must know everything or nothing about it. You seldom know everything, so a lot of times there is uncertainty. Why should organizations care about risk then? Uncertainties affect an organization's objectives, either negatively and destroy value, or positively and contribute value. Organizations exist to sustain or add value. Therefore, the impact of risk materializing can significantly alter your planning and ultimately affect your competitiveness in the market. Organizations are therefore better off if they prepare for key uncertainties they are facing than just to operate blindly. However, to institute measures to mitigate risk, it consumes upfront value. In fact, if organizations would implement measures to mitigate all known risks, they would not be profitable because of the total cost of risk controls. Organizations hence have to decide which risks should be mitigated and which ones will be faced head-on. Access to risk intelligence is therefore crucial for decision-making purposes. Only a holistic approach to risk management will provide sufficient information to optimally balance risk-taking and risk mitigation. And always remember that the main reason organizations exist is to take risk in the first place to create value. So who should then focus on what? If you look at the 3 tiers of an organization, your strategic, tactical, and operational levels, your strategic side of it, your top management, should focus more on value creation. So they should have a bigger appetite for risk-taking and a smaller appetite for control. The control they exercise should be focused on the strategic risks in the company, and they are measured in terms of their shareholder value. In your middle management tiers, there's almost a balance between risk-taking and risk control. And those people operate by implementing key risk indicators that tells them where they are in terms of this balance. At your operational level and your project level, you want a lot of control because you don't want that crushing plant of yours, that screening plant or whatever business you're in to run outside of its parameters and produce off-spec material. So they operate by key control indicators. Patrick Leach said, the second most important value-adding activity a senior executive can engage in is to identify, characterize, and understand the value, uncertainties in the business, and then consistently incorporate this understanding into decisions. So you want your top management people to be aware of what can impact your strategy and then act appropriately. How do we define risk management? ISO 31000 defines risk management as coordinated activities to direct and control an organization with regard to risk. COSO defines it as the culture, capabilities, and practices integrated with strategy setting, very important, and its execution that organizations rely on to manage risk in creating, preserving, and realizing value. So it's all about getting that balance right of getting your organization to be profitable. Important, risk management does not establish an organization's strategy and objectives, but informs the organization of risks associated with alternative strategies considered, and ultimately with the adopted strategy and objectives. Organizations apply risk management to contextualize future uncertainty regarding strategy and objectives. Managing risk does not deal with future decisions, but the future of present decisions, very important. You see in the market that companies that do really well, they are the people that prepare themselves well for their future. And they are the ones that get the balance between risk-taking and control right most of the times. How does risk management contribute value? You start off here at the top and you look at your context. It identifies risks to your business strategy and operations. So you can't really apply risk management if you don't have a proper strategy and objectives. After you've got that in place, then you seek agreement on how much risk management is willing to take. Risk management provides a framework to effectively oversee risk-taking. It also gives access to the right information to manage your risks, especially for management people. It determines the size and scope of risks and report results. It reports how effectively risks are managed, because you can have the best risk management system in place. If you don't manage your risks, it's fruitless. It explains the effectiveness of responses to risk, and it evaluates strategic alternatives and links risk interconnectedness. Our company, just to give you some background, we can assist ASPASA members with strategic planning, business model translation or development, departmental planning. There are lots of departments that don't really know how to interpret the strategy and objectives. We help those people to basically get their department to be effective. We do business event investigations, independent management reviews, supplier assessments, customer and subcontractor reviews, and customer satisfaction reviews. Very important. That the main thing why customers operate is to have successful or to have happy customers. So here we help clients, and we go and sit with the customers and we determine how happy they are with the services they're getting. I now want to look at two important tools that you can use. It's risk management tools to improve your business. I'm going to look at risk appetite and tolerance frameworks. How this fits into risk management is it deals with your risk appetite. It seeks agreement on how much risk management and then the rest of the management team is willing to take. How we define risk appetite. Risk appetite is defined as the amount and type of risk that an organization is willing to pursue or retain. Risk tolerance is defined as the acceptable level of variation an entity is willing to accept regarding the pursuit of its objectives. A risk target is defined as the desired level of risk that the organization believes is optimal to meet its objectives. These decisions are made mostly by senior management. Risk capacity is defined as the amount of risk an organization can actually bear. Just to put that into perspective, you want to maximize value in your organization. So top management sets risk targets that they want to achieve. And that goes back to that balance between risk taking and the reward you want to achieve. Because people seldom achieve a risk target consistently, a management team also sets risk limits. And these limits, as soon as your company reaches these limits, they raise a flag so that someone needs to do something. And then you've got your ultimate risk tolerance. If it goes beyond this, it must go back to your top management and they must basically start looking at the strategy. And then your risk capacity is the maximum amount of risk that an organization can take. So if you operate here, you're very uncertain about the risks you're facing. If you operate here, you're absolutely pedantic about risk taking, which is not good. There's got to be a balance. So how does a risk appetite and risk tolerance statement look? It starts off by looking at your strategic pillars. You've got your strategy, and an organization will typically then determine strategic pillars that helps them to achieve success in a business. Those strategic pillars are translated into a risk appetite and tolerance framework. Each one of these objectives gets unpacked here, and it looks like something like this. You will have your objective, you'll have your strategy, the category of risk, the high-level risk, sorry for that, the appetite that your management team have for risk, and then key risk indicators like I showed to you in that diagram when you start moving out of the ideal risk that the management has selected. So these indicators are broken up in a risk appetite limit, like I said, tolerance limits, and then you get your acceptable performance, tolerable performance, and unacceptable performance. If an indicator reaches tolerable performance, it will go back to the exco or the management team in smaller organizations. If it reaches unacceptable levels, it must go back to the board or the owner, and they must relook at the strategy. Like here, you can see the company are meeting their revenue targets, but they're not profitable. So this must go back to the drawing board, and the company must find out why they are not successful. Why should organizations concern themselves with risk appetite? Risk appetite is an indicator of an organization's hunger for risk when searching for an appropriate risk-reward balance. It obliges senior management to define their strategic objectives and verify that they are explicitly stated. Risk appetite needs to be measurable. And this is very important because if you're a company and you can't measure, we all know that, then you're not going to achieve success. It compels senior management to agree which significant risks they are willing to take and which ones they want to avoid. Formalizing risk appetite reduces future tension amongst key decision makers. When targets are challenged, you often find that senior management disagree on the amount of risk they want to take. By formalizing and having upfront discussion, you resolve this conflict situations when the company really goes through a difficult period. It creates clarity regarding the nature and extent of the significant risks associated with strategic objectives. It necessitates a frequent review of the risk-taking capabilities of an organization. You often find that people go out and they do a strategy and objectives once a year, then they put it somewhere in their drawer and they never look at it again. If you implement this framework, it reminds you to constantly go back and review if your business are on the right track and path. It provides feedback about the effectiveness of strategic risk controls. Like I said, you can put in place all sorts of controls, but if you don't manage them, you are still at risk and you won't achieve your strategy and objectives. It provides a multidimensional risk perspective, considering both short-term and long-term objectives. A lot of times, bonus objectives force senior management just to form on the short term, and they forget about long-term objectives. And by doing this, they consume value instead of creating value for a company. So you make sure that you've got both of those covered in your risk appetite statement. It allows for incentivizing management from a balanced perspective, considering both the organization's profitability and risk profile. It evaluates the appropriateness of resources by also considering the cost of risk management associated with strategies and objectives. You certainly don't want to go overboard. I heard the other day in one of your meetings of a company that implemented very expensive PDR. That's okay if you're a very big company. But I think if you're a smaller company, you've got to look very carefully at your cash reserves and ask yourself the question, if you cannot spend that money more appropriately. I know that safety is always important, but there are other stuff that other people are implementing in a much more effective manner. Improves decision-making regarding alternatives by evaluating the combined impact of profitability and the impact of the risk profile. And it acts as an early indicator of manifested risks to allow for contingency planning. The second tool I want to look at here is your combined assurance framework. That deals with the control environment in risk management. So how does combined assurance fit into the business model? You start off always by deciding how you're going to grow or sustain value. You derive your value drivers, like I showed you previously. Then you determine your strategy and objectives on how you're going to achieve those value drivers. You will develop a risk appetite for each one of your objectives, and you will also do a risk assessment on each one of your objectives. And remember here, it's your strategic objectives. It's not every second objective that you can think of. It's very focused to help you to create value in your organization. From these two devices, you get risk controls. So combined assurance deals with putting controls in place in your company and making sure that they work so that you can protect value in the places where you agreed to do so. This model basically breaks your control into 5 lines of defense, they call it. But it's very simple. It basically just takes your risk controls and it puts it under people that it gives it responsibility and the people that will look at it and make sure that those things are in place. The 5 lines of assurance is basically your first line is your management function looks at this and it focuses on management activities that are performed to control or mitigate risk exposures down to an acceptable level. Your second line of assurance is your specialist functions. These are assurance providers internal to the company but not responsible for the direct process under review, like these people. They can be your SHEC department, your enterprise risk department, sometimes even your HR department, your legal department. In smaller companies, this is not a department, but it's only individuals or an outside person that comes and help you with this. Your third line of assurance, people are familiar with this, it's your independent internal insurance providers acting independently from management and operations. This line is typically your internal audit that people refers to. Your fourth line is your external assurance providers. I think one of the best examples here is your external auditors that basically comes and verify that your company is a going concern. Your fifth line of defense is your governing body. And don't worry about or don't think that because there's governing body here, it's only for big companies. This can be the owner, it can be the management team. They are ultimately responsible to make sure that those controls that they agreed upon are basically happening in the organization. In combined assurance, you will often start off by drawing a map like this. And again, here are the different lines, your first, your second, your third, and your fourth, like I just explained. And typically, here you can see in your operational line, let me just say, these are your strategic risks then. And I only listed the name here. Obviously, you will unpack it in detail here. And then you decide which of your first line management departments or persons will look at those strategic risks, the controls of those strategic risks. Also, you look at your specialist departments, SHEC, ERM, business control, compliance, and agree how they will verify that those controls are in place. Then obviously you can use external people like internal audit, or if you've got a tailings dam, it can be a specialist company that comes and verifies things for you. If you've got a laboratory, it can be people that come and verify things in your laboratory. And then fourth, obviously, external service providers. Then you can also here see, do you review it annually, or what is the period? You can agree on a period. And here you look at, are these things in place? And on which one of these things should I put in place additional plans? So it helps you in your control environment to make sure that you control your controls effectively. How do we define combined assurance in associated terms? Combined assurance is defined as a process that integrates, aligns, and optimizes all assurance services to enable an effective control environment, support the integrity of information used for internal decision making by management, the governing body, and its committees, and support the integrity of the organization's external reports. Benefits of practicing combined assurance. It provides timely and reliable information on the effectiveness of the management of major strategic risk and significant control issues. It facilitates escalation of risk and control issues requiring visibility and attention by senior management by providing a cohesive and comprehensive view of assurance across the risk environment. It provides an opportunity to identify gaps in assurance needs that are vital to the organization and to plug them, including using internal audit in a timely, efficient, and effective manner. It can be used to raise organizational understanding of its risk profile and strengthen accountability and clarity of ownership of controls and assurance thereof, avoiding duplication or overlap. It provides critical supporting evidence to assurance seekers. It facilitates better use of assurance skills and resources. Often you will find in an organization, people get audited to death, and it's because they don't plot out all the assurance activities and optimize them so that they can better deploy their assurance people. Can clarify, rationalize, and consolidate multiple assurance inputs, providing greater oversight of assurance activities for the board, audit and risk committee in line with risk appetite. Obviously, in a smaller company, you don't have these committees, but then obviously it's report back to the management team. Reduce audit fatigue experienced by senior management. Okay, so how does a combined assurance map looks? I've listed two elements here from a company that we've done work for. You can see here, it lists the potential risks, the controls that the company agreed to, and then at each one of those levels, it lists the control activities or the people responsible for those control activities that are in place so that people can go and audit it. Your second level, your third level, and your fourth level. Obviously, your fifth level falls under management. So again, how can we help ASPASA members with these services? We set up ERM frameworks. We set up combined assurance frameworks. We do enterprise risk management assurance assessments. Those are for companies that set up new enterprise risk management systems or risk management systems just to guide them through the process. We develop appetite and tolerance frameworks for organizations, like I've discussed. We do risk culture assessments, which I will cover in the next session. We do ERM training, risk evaluation, and we set up risk evaluation, or do risk evaluation and set a portfolio view for organizations. And then also, I hire out my own and some of my partners' capacity to smaller companies, because all companies haven't got the luxury to afford a dedicated enterprise risk resource. So we will typically go and do 1 or 2 days a month, and we help those companies look at their strategy, set up an enterprise risk management program, and help them to work through that process until such time they can see the benefit from that. The next section I want to look at is why is risk culture important? When I spoke to Nico first, I sent him my dissertation for my master's degree. I've got a master's degree in enterprise risk management, so he asked me to speak particularly on risk culture. So how does risk culture fit into risk management? All these elements of risk management are drawn together by a risk culture. If they are implemented properly, an organization will have a proper risk culture. If it's something that runs on the side, you won't have a proper risk culture. Purpose of understanding and assessing risk culture. Managers apply risk management when seeking balance between risk-taking and reward. The post-mortem reviews of the recent global financial crisis of 2008 revealed a disconnect between the actual and documented risk profiles at various multinational financial organizations. The risk management practiced by boards and legislators at these organizations failed to protect stakeholder interest. It means that those risk assessments didn't really talk to the strategic risks the companies were facing. A need existed to establish the effectiveness of risk management practice by organizations. It became evident that the value of risk management in contributing to the achievement of organizational strategies and objectives cannot be accessed by evaluating organizational risk management capability, but rather by verifying the presence of a mature risk culture. So you cannot go to a company and ask them, show me your enterprise risk management program, and then give them 10 out of 10, they haven't got a problem to protect value and to manage their risks. You've got to look deeper to see if that really forms part of the culture of that company. So risk management capacity supported by a mature risk culture enables a risk management approach in support of integrated risk decision-making at all levels. It can be explained like this, and this is true also for SHEC and all those other disciplines that you implement in your organization. If you run it as a sideshow in your organization just to comply with legislation, it's got no impact. The red here is your enterprise risk department or your SHEC department, but you can see it didn't infiltrate into the rest of the company. So they're just running it to keep the DMR happy or to keep the financial auditors happy or whatever. So typically this company will have a poor risk culture. Here you can see this company, they have basically made enterprise risk part of their management DNA. And this company will most probably manifest a mature risk culture. How does risk culture manifest in organizations? There are two experts in this field, Shine and Hofstede, and they explain organizational culture as existing in different layers, much like an onion with layers from the inside to the outer layer. According to Shine, there are 3 layers of culture present in groups operating in an organization. On the inside exists a set of underlying core beliefs and values determining a group's preferred behaviors, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. These core beliefs and values cannot be measured directly, are extremely difficult to change, and cause group anxiety when challenged. At a layer above lie espoused beliefs reflecting a group's aspiration in an ideal world. This level is also referred to as the strategic level, as it concerns itself with strategic beliefs of where the organization should be heading and can be determined by examining the vision, strategy, and high-level objectives as compiled by senior management. Because espoused beliefs do not correlate with actual performance, they leave areas of behavior unexplained, creating a feeling that some areas of culture are still out of hand. At the outer layer lies visible and touchable artifacts, which are products of underlying assumptions and therefore a manifestation of culture. So how this works, if you talk about a safety program in an organization. A middle management, your strategic side of it, people at top management level might believe they've got the best check program in place. They've got the most beautiful presentations of what their company does in terms of safety management. But on the inside, this company does not really practice it. They run a program to show to the DMR, to show to their clients, to show to their buying department that they are compliant to check management. But the management team have got a deep belief that check is a waste of time. So you cannot measure this directly, the inside part of it. You also cannot look at the glossy magazines and listen to their talk shows when they invite someone to a board meeting or a management meeting. So you've got to go out to the plant and look at those observable artifacts. And that is what culture is. It is certain things that you go and look at in an organization to determine if they really have implemented a check program or an enterprise risk management program, if they're really practicing risk management. So how do we define risk culture? There's an academic author's definition, organization's propensity to take risks as perceived by the managers in the organization. The Institute of Risk Management defines it as the values, beliefs, knowledge and understanding about risks shared by a group of people with a common purpose. The university where I did my master's defined it as the risk culture of an organizational group is manifested by the importance given to considering risk when the group makes decisions. The level of explicit inclusion of risk in decision making represents the implicit subjective value afforded to risk by the group. So it's only if there's evidence that people use risk management in decision making, because when people make decision, they deal with the real hot stuff in the organization. So that will tell you whether they consider risk or not. And like I presented you what the real purpose of risk is. If they disregard risk and the benefits of it, they will be plagued by uncertainty and will really struggle to operate an organization. Risk management's capability supported by a mature risk culture should enable a risk management approach in support of integrated risk-informed decision making. How do we assess risk culture? Organizational core beliefs and values cannot be assessed directly, but organizational management can rely on assessment of visible and touchable artifacts of culture to get a sense of possible shortcomings, improvement opportunities. Because of global pressure exerted on regulators to prevent further financial crises, the Financial Services Board created a well-respected framework for assessing risk culture, which has been used by most industry players to advance their work on risk culture, also creating new indicators for assessment purposes. So a lot of companies and also the Northwest University use this to start off their risk culture program. According to the Financial Services Board, several indicators can be assessed to determine the maturity of an organization's risk culture. For this purpose, when assessing an organization's risk culture, indicators must be considered collectively as they are mutually reinforcing. So you cannot just go and look at one or two elements of risk culture. You've got to look at it collectively and understand the relationship between those indicators. My master's dissertation compared senior and middle manager perceptions of risk culture in a mining company consisting of a corporate office and 10 mining facilities. Risk culture maturity perceptions were assessed by applying the Northwest University Center of Applied Management's risk culture scale. So we do an assessment and then we establish if your company really are embracing the benefits of risk management. Indicators include tone at the top, risk-based compensation, accountability for managing risk, risk communication, risk management leadership, risk understanding, risk-related role clarity, and informed decision-making. So if you look at each one of those elements, they are again also subdivided into different areas where we've got indicators that we measure in your company to determine if you've got a mature risk culture. To get back to the credibility of the Northwest University and the services that we offer, my work was assessed internationally by Gert-Jan Hofstede. You will remember that he is one of the 2 global experts on organizational culture. He was happy with my work. This is the work that I done comparing senior and middle managers' perception of risk culture in a mining company, and I got it with a distinction. So I'm just including this not to market myself, but to show that South African people are really doing good work in this area. The year that I complete my dissertation, there were 2 other candidates also that got distinctions. All of their dissertations marked externally in Europe and in other countries. So the last part is for your own benefit. It's to give you practical pointers of what you can do to improve your risk culture in a small-scale mining operation. Risk culture in smaller scale open pit mines. I'm just putting the information here so that you understand in what context you've got to use this. The next couple of slides focus on general factors that may influence risk culture in a smaller organization. The validity of these statements depend on the maturity of your risk culture. Because of time constraints, not all factors influencing risk culture are discussed, and the interdependencies of these factors were not considered. The intention is to provide isolated pointers of factors that influence risk culture to increase understanding of this concept. First, I want to look at risk leadership. Observations that I make when I visit companies. Smaller organizations, the management team often neglects to stand back and formally agree on a strategy and objectives to achieve a future aim. You find that companies start off entrepreneurially and they move into a process where they make money, but they never go back and revisit their strategy and objectives. Entrepreneurial owners of these smaller organizations often just leak bits and pieces of the latest plans to different management team members as the need arises. Because management received a partial message, they communicate a fractured perspective of where the organization is heading, causing a lot of uncertainty with employees having to make things happen on a daily basis. Management decision-making in such an environment tends to be reactive and responds based on a limited picture of how to optimally resolve matters and benefit the overall strategy. When major uncertain events happen, it often becomes apparent that the management team spent little time on understanding the threats to an already vague strategy, putting them on the back foot of preserving company value. The presence of a vague strategy usually causes management to be unaware of certain risks and obsessed by others, which destroys company value. So what can you do? How to improve your risk culture? Senior management set clear expectations and strategic direction for risk management. You can ask yourself the following. Do our senior managers understand how proper risk management can assist the organization to grow or sustain value? Is risk management incorporated in strategic planning and objective setting? Do senior managers use the outcomes of risk management for strategic decision-making at all levels? Managers throughout the organization are clear on what is expected of them in terms of managing risks. Ask yourself the following. Do our managers understand the risks associated with our strategy and objectives and how it relates to their departments? Have the strategy and objectives and associated risk appetite been cascaded down in the organization to create the necessary alignment and control? You often find that people do it at the top, but then at the bottom, there's no alignment and people still do their own thing. So if a certain part of your business is out of control, there's no way that you will be successful in the end of the day. Sorry. Are managers measured on the agreed strategy, objectives, and associated risk appetite for each area? Again, if you don't measure it, you will most probably not be successful. Leaders focus risk management efforts to support the organization in delivering its strategic objectives. So if you've got a risk management team that doesn't focus on risk management, again, the rest of the company can do what they like. They will not be successful. So ask yourself the following. Do our risk management efforts, time and money, relate back to the objectives the organization are pursuing? Smaller companies, I find, are often guided by the risks identified by strong individuals, rather than to focus on risk related to its strategy and objectives. Are the costs associated with upholding our risk controls related to the risk appetite of the organization? Or do you just find that someone down in the organization have got a passion for something and they put in place excessive controls, costing the company a fortune, money that should have been spent at another place to make the company sustainable? Manifested risk, another area that we measure. Observations about dealing with bad news, manifested risks. Bad news impacting an organization travels fast, cause uncertainty about the status quo, give rise to loaded emotions, and usually requires a change of approach within an organization. Bad news incidents occur without notice and often require thorough investigation before realizing the full impact on an organization. Because incidents will naturally fall within the responsibility of one or more senior managers, there are often resentment and varying views of how to deal with a bad news impact, even amongst management. Complex bad news incidents often require bold decision-making in alignment with company values. So management members have to be bold in addressing bad news events. In smaller organizations, managers often follow less formal investigative processes, causing them to underestimate the impact of bad news incidents. This creates many unanswered questions with managers and employees, give rise to increasing uncertainty, result in many false assumptions and accusations throughout the organization, causing low productivity as employees try to make sense of an incident. Employees and managers with malicious intentions use environments like these as a breeding ground to push their own agendas, further complicating matters. So what can you do? Leaders refer to company values when responding to challenges. And again, I just want to mention, I'm just mentioning certain elements under these different topics. I haven't got enough time in a forum like this to cover everyone, so please see it in that perspective. So leaders refer to company values when responding to challenges. Ask yourself, does the outcome of incident investigations consider and uphold the organization's values? Senior managers involved in incidents are often treated differently than others which negatively impacts senior management's credibility. Do our values support a blame culture, or is the organization focused on learning from manifested risks? Organizations will be plagued with repeat incidents under a blaming culture. You know that from your SHEC departments as well. Risk communication are open and honest. Does management have the maturity to recognize their part when dealing with bad news? Neglecting blatant management error and risk communication discredit effective risk management. Are resources wasted to implement corrective action aimed at resolving fictitious issues rather than correcting pending strategic anomalies? Risk accountability and governance. Observations about risk accountability and governance. Most organizations would be able to present significantly better financial results if they were able to erase a couple of significant events that occurred during a financial period. More successful companies also experience similar events, but in most cases were better prepared to minimize their impact. Proper risk management can make a significant contribution to an organization's profitability be fully embraced by a management team. Risk management deals with uncertainty, but does not happen by chance. Listen again. Risk management deals with uncertainty, but does not happen by chance. Management has to recognize its value and follow a deliberate strategy to implement the necessary infrastructure to make risk management work. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. As was demonstrated earlier, risk management needs dedicated approaches at strategic, tactical, and operational level. Smaller scale miners often have less management capacity to deal with similar internal and external challenges compared to bigger organizations in the same industry. Smaller scale miners, therefore, have to be crystal clear where they focus their resources, again highlighting the importance of a focused strategy with objectives. Because these organizations have a similar workload expected from fewer bodies, management and employees could easily feel overwhelmed and pay attention to the wrong issues. Role clarification and governance is therefore crucial. Management defines accountability for management of key business risks clearly. Has the organization allocated accountability for managing key business risks? In smaller organizations, this role can be allocated to any senior manager having the necessary passion, knowledge, and capacity. Parts of this role can be outsourced to an industry expert on a fixed-term basis. Risk accountabilities are captured within managers' roles descriptions and performance targets. Do we value the outcomes of risk management to such an extent as to include risk responsibilities in manager role descriptions with associated risk performance targets? Are risk targets updated to reflect the organization's latest risk profile? Risk transparency. Observations about risk transparency. Risk is the effect of uncertainty on a specific organization. It's easy to get distracted and do a risk assessment for every possible event that could impact an organization. Such behavior frustrates employees and results in a poor risk culture. Management employees must focus on uncertainties that impact the overall company strategy and objective. Departmental heads must focus on uncertainties that impact their departmental strategy and objectives, which are aligned to the overall company strategy and objectives. Management and employees must understand top management's appetite for risk-taking to institute and manage proper controls and raise a flag when the tolerance limits of the overall risk, I think, of their department objectives are exceeded. Sorry for that mistake. Risk information should therefore be set up to support managers in their decision-making to institute timeous mitigation strategies against manifesting risk events impacting the achievement of strategy and objectives and ultimately value. So ask yourself the following: how to improve your risk culture in terms of risk transparency? Risk information is compiled in a meaningful format that can be interpreted and acted upon by leaders. Ask yourself the following: does the information make available updated, meaningful, and relevant risk information to make informed business decisions? Does risk reporting assist management personnel to grow their understanding of risk and performance to allow improved decision-making during strategy and objective setting? In terms of risk resources, I'm going quickly now because we're almost out of time. Observations about risk resources. Effective risk management requires that a company follows a structured approach according to the principles of a credible risk management standard or framework. For example, ISO 31001 or CORSO. Because risk management does not dictate strategy and objectives, but are dependent on their existence, organizations have to carefully plan their implementation strategy. It's important to realize that from a risk culture perspective, an organization may have the best risk management resources in place and adopted the best structured approach available, but still scores low on risk culture because the system is not impacting strategic decision making. Risk management resources should therefore be applied in a manner where they impact decision making at every level of the organization. The person driving risk management therefore needs to have management credibility and the ability to argue the impact of events on decision making, often having to compare strategic options in a holistic manner with the aim of maximizing value. Investment in risk management resources by smaller scale open pit miners can be implemented in phases. Companies have to decide if they're going to implement a risk framework using their current resource base, appoint a risk specialist, or whether they are going to outsource the task to a specialist company under the supervision of a senior manager. How to improve your risk culture? Implement an effective risk management framework. Empower managers to challenge how risks are being managed when appropriate. Has the organization agreed upon and documented a consistent, effective and affordable approach to manage strategic risk? Has the organization appointed executive or senior manager to challenge how risks are being managed where appropriate? Smaller organizations often fall in the trap of following ill-conceived strategies when the organization is under pressure, instead of considering more options and following a more long-term and sustainable approach. An independent view on risk management and associated decision-making can be invaluable to preserve longer-term value. Risk skills, and this is the last two slides. As discussed earlier, smaller scale open pit miners have less resources to perform similar tasks compared to larger organizations in the same industry. Small scale miners will therefore have to apply multi-skilling to ensure they are able to remain competitive in their specific industry. It is important to remember that employees equipped to make good decisions both at middle and lower management levels can be a competitive differentiator in any industry and preserve and often create value. Role descriptions and training programs in a multi-skilling environment have to be specific to meet the requirements of risk management with the aim of adding overall company value at a specific level in the organization. Role responsibilities and related training programs with regard to risk management need to be integrated in the other responsibilities of the specific role. It could make sense to outsource the development of risk training material to risk specialist organizations. Training programs should focus on equipping employees with practical tools and skills to apply proper risk management. Again, how to improve your culture, put structured programs in place to support those needing awareness, training, and competence in risk management. What you should ask yourself, do you have structured manager risk training programs in place to prepare individuals to manage risk connected to their roles? Does your manager risk training content prepare managers to practice management challenge in a manner that allows for improved decision-making, organizational learning, and employee ownership? Does your manager risk training program explain how risk management relates to company strategies and objectives? I want to thank you for that. I'm just going to run you so that you can meet our team. It's basically, we are the management team, me and Peter van Wijngaard. We both have extensive experience in management and risk management. For those who found value in this presentation and want to get into contact with us, this is our contact details, and you are most welcome. If you want me to present this to other forums as well, I can change it and make it more specific to meet your specific needs. And now we can, I will take any questions that there are and provide you with the best answers that I possibly can. Are there any questions?
Fafa's there. Fafa, ask your question.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jaco and Nico.
I see your question, Fafa. I just want to read it.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Just read out your question. I can't see it on the side.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that.
Okay, maybe just give it verbally, Fafa.
Okay, yeah. I agree on the strategy and the risk management, and therefore one of the
Can you
questions.
still hear me? I'm not hearing anyone at this stage. Nico,
Yes.
can you just maybe come back and help me here?
I'm hearing you, or you're not hearing me. I don't know what's wrong then.
Nico, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you clearly.
Okay, Jaco, can you hear me?
Doesn't look like it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Are you all right now, Fafa?
Yeah, Jaco, can you hear me now?
Doesn't look like it.
No, it's fine, Nico. I will afterwards and just send you guys a mail. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, I will do it that way then. Fine.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? I don't see any other hands. I think.
Okay, I can hear you now. Nico, sorry for that. I don't know what was wrong. I hope everyone followed the presentation.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Okay, grand.
Any other questions? Any other comments? It seems to me, yeah, it was very, very informative. I must say, one always thinks that risk assessment has only got to do with health and safety, but it's actually much more than that. So if there's anybody who wants to use Jaco, and if you can't get hold of him, then contact ASPASA or myself, and we'll ask him to come, firstly give you a price, what you want him to do, and so forth. And then, yeah, maybe there's value in your company after he's done some work for you. And I think he understands the mining industry, comes out of the mining industry, so he understands us. If there's no more comments or there's no questions, then I'm going to thank everybody for having sat in this very informative meeting. I think it was great. So I never have my glasses on in front of the laptop because I can't see. But thanks for coming, Jaco. Thanks a lot for your presentations. And again, people just remember, Anneke will most probably in a day or two's time send out the link and people can look at it and maybe even read it again or watch it again or even share it with some of your colleagues, because I think there's a huge amount of information in this presentation. If there's no comments, or questions, quickly shout and then I'm going to cut. Jaco, thanks.
Thank you, Nico, and I hope it benefits ASPASA and its members.
Thanks. Is there a hand somewhere? Sorry, I can't see who. Not. Anneke? No. Right, it seems to be.
It's Maswana. Maswana's hand is up.
Okay. Want to go for it?
Maswana, unmute yourself, please.
You can't. There you are. Right, Maswana?
No, I think he had a sticky hand.
Okay. Right. No, thanks, Anneke, for holding this thing for us. Thank Jaco for coming, and thanks for everybody who sat in. And go well. And there's Maswana's hand again. Are you still there, Maswana? No, I think it's a communication problem. Thanks, Anneke. I think we're going to cut the program now. And go well, everybody.
Thank you, and bye-bye.